In just over a week, it's time for Blizzconline, the definitive best name for a virtual convention I've ever heard. It's an interesting time for Blizzard as it slowly loses whatever soul it had left. But let's try to ignore that for the moment and discuss everything we can expect from the show. From Vicarious Visions Diablo II Remake to are we prepared for the Burning Crusade Classic? Probably, yeah. As well as updates on Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4. Check the timestamps to jump straight into the discussion. Hello and welcome to the one, the only, quick Save the Podcast. I'm your host, Mitch, as always, and joining me is Callum.
Greetings.
And like I said in the intro, we are talking about Blizzconline, which is, like I said in the intro again, the best name. Like, when you're making an online version of something, Blizzard have nailed it.
They really have, yeah.
Unlike the release of Warcraft 3 Reforged, which still stings. So, obviously, Diablo 4 is the big one because after Diablo Immortals, which we're not talking about, but you can expect it, which is sort of unfortunate because it will be here. But Diablo 4 was announced at BlizzCon 2019, the last BlizzCon, because BlizzCon 2020 was pushed to in a week's time. So you can expect a trailer for it, not the one that's showing, but a new trailer. And I expect a new class reveal to tie it with the Diablo 2 remake, which we'll get to. And my expectation is that it'll be Diablo 2's Amazon class, which uses spears and stuff. I didn't play Diablo 2. You didn't play Diablo 2?
Neither, yeah.
Which neither of us have played Diablo 2. With a remake, we will. And another thing you can probably expect is, I think, would be a beta announcement, as it played a very key role in the last Diablo game, which was Diablo 3. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time, and probably as far as a beta, it would probably be a good time to do it, just to kind of like renew interest as well. I mean, it's obviously, you know, Diablo, so it has a very big player base anyway, but I think, like you said, it's kind of crazy that it was first announced back in 2019, and obviously we kind of, you know, didn't have BlizzCon last year, so I think probably having a beta would be a wise move.
Do you remember BlizzCon 2018, where it was all hyped for Diablo 4, and then it was Diablo Immortals?
Oh god, that was, yeah, just so like short-sighted. Like it was, yeah.
You all have phones.
Definitely not Blizzard's finest hour.
No, so now obviously you've gone through expectations. I do want to discuss more about Diablo 4 and why it's our most anticipated one, or at least mine. I don't know about you, but like I think to talk about Diablo, it's like both of us got into it with Diablo 3. Not any other Diablo, because Diablo 3 is the best-selling one. Yeah. It sold shitloads. So the reason why I'm personally excited is that Diablo 4, I almost said 3, some people don't consider 3 the sequel, is that Diablo 4 is an open-world shared online game that sounds remarkably like an MMO. Yeah, it seems to be taking what was good about the game and then putting it into an MMO kind of thing, which Diablo 3 kind of went for, but this seems to be taking it further in actually good ways, because it has MMO areas like PvP and world events happening in the Oval map, which is now an open world thing. I don't think it'll be randomized.
Yeah.
However, dungeons are separate, which will be randomized. My real question to you is, how much should they lean on the MMO genre? Like, should they add raids and go all in, or take a step back and keep it more grounded in what 3 was?
I think that's the thing that interests me most about this, because like I didn't know a huge amount about this, Mitch, like before like kind of like doing this video, like going back to like the cinematic trailer and some of the gameplay trailers. But I personally think the idea of, you know, making it more like MMO is actually really exciting. Like it almost just seems like kind of a natural fit like for the game. And like you said, they had started to do that to some degree with Diablo 3, but it wasn't kind of fully fledged. Like it was still, for the most part, a single player experience, and then you had the option of playing co-op as well with friends. But I think the idea of actually making it, you know, fully open world and actually almost more like MMO is actually really exciting. And obviously that's a real strength of Blizzard's as well. So I think the more they lean into that, I think potentially the better.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to fall under the same complaints that Diablo 3 has, in that people kind of don't want that. Some people don't.
Yeah.
And I can kind of see why in a lot of ways that you would like it to be like what Diablo 2 was.
Especially for people that like grew up with that series and like are used to it as a single player sort of, yeah.
It's sort of funny that you call it single player when Battle.net was made for Diablo 2 and sort of reinvented Diablo a bit. And I'd say Diablo 2 is more meaningful than Diablo 1 was in terms of establishing the genre as it stands.
Yeah.
I know, I'm definitely all for the MMO thing because I think like it creates, it's got pros and cons, but I think for me, I like the way they're kind of looking more into seeing what Diablo could be. And like there's Path of Exile, there's other Diablo-like games that are online, but this seems to be like Blizzard taking what's been good about Path of Exile and all these other new Diablo games and like using it to make their own game better, which is sort of what Blizzard's always done.
Yeah.
Like when you think about World of Warcraft, it was just EverQuest done better for that time. And so like a lot of these are like that.
Yeah, I think that's always really been their strength. I think that's also a wise thing as a game developer as well, because like there are so many games competing in that space that it just makes sense to take like the things that have worked from other series. And it's not as if they're like copying things. Like it's basically like taking things like you said and almost like tweaking it and just kind of perfecting it.
And
I
putting
think,
them all together to make something that is better.
Yeah, like taking a blend of kind of things that work across different games or like different genres and making it work. And I think that seems to be now what they're doing with Diablo 4 as well.
Yeah, so I'm excited. We'll definitely learn more about this. They have a couple panels on it, which of course they do. It's the next big upcoming thing. So.
Yeah, I think for me this would be my most anticipated as well for sure. Like just looking through this list, I think this is again not something I knew a huge amount about, but watching some of the gameplay trailers, and they've shown off a decent amount of gameplay already, so we know what it looks like.
We know what it looks like. It's definitely going for that more gothic, dark kind of look to it, which I do like. I like a lot of how it's looking. It looks very like it's not colorful, which I don't think Diablo should be.
Yeah, it should be dark and gritty, yeah.
Which is what they've definitely nailed in this. I like that talent trees are returning. I like that there's darkness, there's clear darkness in the areas. And I like the spell effects lighting up the darkness. Other things mechanically that you can dodge roll, which is coming straight off the console versions of Diablo 3.
Yeah, and I think also potentially the scale of it is exciting as well, like how big the game could actually be, like given that it's fully open world and these sort of like MMO elements too. Like it could be a really, quite a huge game as well.
And they've shown abilities that take advantage of that, like the barbarian jumps, like as I say, he jumps off the platform over to the other area.
Like across,
And I think there's a lot of good things they can do in that. So they've shown off 3 classes so far, which is the Druid, Barbarian, and Sorceress. I said they might add the Amazon because to link it to Diablo 2. But how many classes do you think there will be? Because there's a lot of classes from Diablo 3 that are represented here.
Yeah, I almost feel that like, because we were sort of discussing it a bit beforehand, Mitch, I wouldn't be surprised if, Diablo 3 had 5 at launch. I think this one could maybe have more. It might have maybe 6. I do think that almost they are being kind of like deliberately a little bit coy with like maybe not showing off too much about the new classes.
Yeah.
Because like you said, the ones that we've seen are kind of a bit more familiar, but there's a couple, even from Diablo 3 that aren't there. So I think they'll definitely have probably a brand new class, then maybe like 1 or 2 others. So probably at least 5 minimum.
Yeah.
Possibly even 6, yeah.
Which Doctor was brand new. So it wouldn't surprise me if they come up with like a new kind of thing. I'd be upset if Demon Hunter doesn't appear because I really enjoyed that. But
I think it would be a cool fit for Diablo.
There's no guarantee, but the Amazon sort of can replace that in a way. As well as rogues, which weren't really a part, which are in Diablo.
Yeah.
So there's lots of options, and I think I really like the Necromancer DLC they added for 3, which is from Diablo 2, which was one of the more fun classes. Like just building up bone armor from all the corpses, blowing up all the bodies. It's just like, this is metal.
Yeah, that was always a very cool class, just as far as the lore, like just the actual like class sort of like role. Yeah, I thought that was very cool.
So I think Diablo 4, very exciting. You can expect a lot of good things from BlizzCon because it'll be its time to shine. And there's one thing you can't expect is that it will release this year. Yeah. I think you may see like a tentative release date of 2022 at the end or something like that. But I reckon they'll talk about a beta, and that beta will be this year because they've already shown off and let people play it. So moving on to the more interesting development news thing that happened a little while ago, which is in regards to Diablo 2 having a remake. I expect it to be revealed with a trailer and a release date or again, maybe a beta so they avoid the Warcraft 3 disaster, because that just released without feedback, without anyone having any suggestions of what it could be, and just like didn't hit the mark. Do I expect them to talk about Warcraft 3 Reforged? Maybe. Do I expect them to try and mend the damage? Like mend the bridge. The bridge is shattered into little pieces. It's very hard to fix at this point. So you can expect that. I don't think it'll affect the original release of Diablo 2. I think it'll be its own separate thing, because that was part of the backlash. I think
that's another thing that probably, you would think they would have learned from Warcraft 3.
Yeah, because like don't touch. Leave the original for people who want to play the original.
Yeah.
Who enjoy that in the shape it's in, and then update it for new fans who are playing this new version that doesn't affect the other one.
And I think, like you say, I think in retrospect that was a big mistake, especially for something, as beloved as Warcraft 3 and now also Diablo 2. I think it would be a mistake not to have some sort of beta, because, it is a game that like is loved by so many people. And it's actually a good thing to get as much feedback as you can from the player base, because they can maybe spot things that, were missed out in development.
Well, people who've been playing this game for 21 years now, who I'm sure that fan community is dedicated, and I know they are, and they are going to want it to be how they remember it. And I want to experience it the way they remember it, because neither of us has played Diablo 2. I was 7 when Diablo 2 came out. You were like 5.
I was probably like 5, yeah.
Yeah. So shouldn't be playing this game. I did play Grand Theft Auto at 7. So yeah. I also expect it to release before Diablo 4. That was a good rhyme. Let's do that again. So now to get into what's really interesting is the news that led up to it. It involves the death of a studio. It involves a lot of interesting facts. So according to Jason Schreier, who this podcast cannot exist without, apparently, this remake's been going on for a while. And Blizzard pulled the remake from Team 1, which is their classic team, who was in charge of Warcraft 3 Reforged, and they lost that. And then it was given to the Diablo team, which is now overseeing it, with Vicarious Visions, developers of Destiny 2's PC port, Crash, Insane Trilogy, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 on the project. So what's happened now is Vicarious Visions is gone. It's just been merged into Blizzard, which is sort of a sad fate for a studio that's done so well in remasters, just to be told, now you're part of Blizzard. And I say, look, I trust them to make this game. Like, the previous remakes they've done have been excellent, and I wouldn't trust another developer. It's just sad that we don't get to see them try something else after this.
Yeah.
Because they are now Blizzard.
It is, yeah. And it's like, it is definitely a shame, but I think, like you say, it's in terms of like dealing with like this project, or like handling this project, which is like very important. And I think it's very important that they get it right after what happened with Warcraft 3, like just to show that
they cannot have that
happen. Exactly, like something that is like so beloved from their history. I think they really have to get it right. So they seem to be the right studio to do it, based on, like you said, based on their track record.
It's fun looking into Diablo 2, because there was an article on GameSpot I found. The co-creator of Diablo 2, Max Schaefer, recalled that in the 11th hour of Diablo 2's development, the entire backup of the game's source code and assets were lost, and that it would be very difficult for Blizzard to do a Diablo 2 remaster. He said remaster, but this is a remake, because of all the assets that are used are pretty much gone. They'd have to make it from scratch. So this is a big project, and it'd be interesting to see when it launches, because if they've had to remake a lot of stuff, but in my mind these days, they probably have tools that can go into like the software itself and kind of rip it apart.
Yeah.
There's probably been like a studio who's looked into this, because remakes and remasters are becoming so popular.
Yeah.
And that the source code maybe hasn't lasted 21 years, that they need to just figure it out. And it's very interesting to see what that means, what that data loss is going to mean for this project. And it either means a lot of effort, or have they reused a lot of Diablo 3 assets to make it possible? Yeah,
in terms like maybe just to make it more like efficient, like that. Yeah, that's kind of the question. It'd be interesting to see kind of behind the scenes, like how that actually affected things.
Yeah, I wish Blizzard were open about what happened behind the scenes, because they don't really ever talk about it. So I think it's probably a lot of effort. I think they know how much Diablo 2 means to the fans, and like what it means to Diablo as a whole. That I guess they knew that about Warcraft 3 as well, but what did that ultimately mean? So it does interest me a lot because, like as we said, we weren't old enough to play it at launch. I've been meaning to play it for a long time, and remakes often appear at the time you really want to play something. And so I'm curious to see how that game holds up these days.
Yeah, me too. I think it's also a very good time to launch it because, like, obviously there's like a lot of renewed interest in Diablo because of Diablo 4, and I feel like it's been like long enough since Diablo 3, like since the last full sequel. So I think either for people that like are interested in Diablo now because of 4, like missed out on 2 like us at the time, or obviously for those who actually like grew up playing Diablo, like it's really exciting. I really hope they get it right. Because I think it's could potentially be very cool to see it remade today.
And so moving on from the dark realms of Diablo and sadness and misery, I think it's time to talk about Overwatch 2, a game that people don't think needed to exist. But so there's a lot you can expect about it. We'll get into that. Overwatch 2 has a behind the scenes as its main panel. So that tells us a bunch of things, is that they're not going to talk about that much about it, which is sort of becoming an issue because it was announced at BlizzCon 2019 as a full sequel to Overwatch with an added focus on story and hero missions, which for the most part the original game didn't have outside of a few like seasonal things like they used to have. So that's really interesting. The hero missions are separate from the story and are highly replayable. Players can level up heroes and unlock customization options that modify their abilities in the game. So they're really trying to create more PvE, which I find pretty interesting. And honestly, it's the only thing that makes me more interested in it because at launch I played, and that's been years now. I'm just not that interested in the PvP side of things anymore. I know it's a PvP shooter, but like Callum, as someone who skipped the original game, does a PvE mode make it more compelling for you to be interested in it?
Yeah, I think it definitely does. Like, I'm sort of in the same boat as, pretty much exactly what you just said, where like just this type of game nowadays doesn't have the same appeal. And I think that's kind of a mix of things. Like, I think for one, it's having less time, but it's also like that was kind of more so what I used to do with friends. Like, I think a big part of like playing these games over the years is you have a good group of friends that you play with. And sort of a lot of my friends that play games now kind of play a mixture of different games. So yeah, I kind of, and it wasn't necessarily to do with the game per se, because I remember in the lead up to even to the first Overwatch being really excited for it and thinking it looked really, kind of fresh and quite cool. But just, literally just kind of never got around to playing it. But I think that the idea of having more PvE content in this one, I think definitely is interesting. Yeah, I think it would probably make me more open to giving it a shot instead of just being, a straight sequel just with, new maps and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm definitely curious, I would say, to see what it's like.
I'm curious how substantial it is, how many options there are, how often they release them.
Is it like a fully fledged mode, or is it just kind of like a small
by the
kind of
sounds
side
of it,
thing?
it's fully fledged. But
yeah, it does
take
sound
that with
like
a grain of salt because, it's interesting to see how it'll be. It's been so long since the original, and it's also been a while since Overwatch has had real updates. And like that game sort of, its popularity is really losing steam. But anyway, based on all that stuff and previous showings, I expect to see a new PvE and probably a PvP map. And just like to generate hype, to generate interest. Even if it's like maybe one level and like a behind the scenes look at like a new map and probably a look into the new hero, Sojourn. I don't know if I pronounced it right or if it's like Sojourn. Or something, and like in my notes, I think I'm missing a letter.
I think Sojourn, yeah.
Sojourn?
Like take a sojourn.
Sojourn.
Yeah.
That's a real word,
Bit
is it?
French sounding.
Well, they're Canadian and they're a captain of Overwatch. That's the law. That's all I know about it. Don't question it. So I'd love to see a new animated short. Those really good animated things they used to bring out.
I remember
like
watching
this
it.
One.
Yeah, I remember watching a couple of those even as someone who wasn't like an Overwatch player and thinking like, man, this is. I mean, Blizzard are always nail it when it comes to their animations.
They just need to make their own series.
Yeah, I would actually watch that. Like even as someone who like doesn't play the game, like they're just
an Overwatch series would be great. It's about 5 years too late, but it would be really good because the thing that made me that put Overwatch on the map was Blizzard making a new game, but it was also the art style they have for these. It's almost
really cool.
Pixar-esque, which is like what Bridge of Cana and other things are like. These look so good, and I really wish they'd make more. Anyway, tangent over. So a couple of interesting things about Overwatch 2, and things that almost hurt it as a sequel that make it sound a bit redundant, is that all characters and maps will transfer over. All existing Overwatch cosmetics will carry over as well. It's fully compatible with the original, as Overwatch 2 players can party up with Overwatch 1, and Overwatch 1 is receiving every new PvP map, so they're trying to not lose that, like, the amount of players they have.
That's always kind of the risk with, say, like, even with Destiny was kind of the debate of, like, do you make more expansions or make full-blooded sequels?
And they chose expansions.
Yeah, and I think to a degree, like this one almost seems to be blurring the line, where it almost kind of, like, is a mixture between a sequel and an expansion, because, like, you also have that thing of, like, you don't... Like, it's crazy this game came out, like, 2016, like, you know, almost 5 years ago now. But, like, when people have invested all that time, like, you don't want to lose, like, all the... Even if it's just stuff that you've earned in-game, like cosmetics and stuff like that.
The thing I wonder is, should maybe Overwatch 1 should become free-to-play?
Right,
And
yeah.
then you generate more interest, you get more players, you get more people focusing on Overwatch. Like League of Legends in a way, which is free. And, like, you've got Overwatch 2 as the paid version, which seems more premium. It's got the PvE, it's got all that, and, like, you could do it that way. And I think that would, like, help boost the player numbers, which Overwatch definitely needs, and especially if it wants to stay relevant into the future, because I know how important Overwatch League is for them, but you need players, you need new people coming in, and I think that is the best way to do it.
That's actually a really good point, because then you could almost have, like, for someone who's like a newer player, like the original Overwatch could almost serve as like a free trial, like just literally, like, you know, play it, like it's free to play. You can get a sense of, like, how the game plays and the mechanics, and then if you really like it and want to play it longer term, you can go to, like, the quote unquote premium version, which is Overwatch. So that's actually, I think a really good idea.
They're also exploring other monetization options instead of loot boxes. So do we expect a battle pass like Fortnite and Apex Legends, considering the whole loot boxes, a gambling debate, and all that, and how popular battle passes and that are?
It wouldn't surprise me. I think probably it would make sense, like, in part because, like you say, like, there has been a massive backlash against loot boxes. Like, they just have such a bad rap now in the gaming media. So I think probably it would be wise to do that, because it's still a way for them to, like, monetize certain things, but it doesn't have quite the same kind of negative kind of stigma around it. So yeah, probably I wouldn't be surprised if they did something like that.
I just don't see loot boxes, like, being worth it, because it just creates so much debate. And I think the debate for that's ended. And I think with the EU ruling against them everywhere, like with FIFA and all that, I just don't think it'll be a thing.
Yeah.
So expect something like that. I wouldn't expect a release date, because they said in their quarterly report that they don't expect it to be 2021. Same with Diablo 4. And they'll probably acknowledge a delay, because Jeff Kaplan's normally, like, playing that kind of, like, I'm just a developer, I'm on your side.
Yeah.
And he said there's still a ways to go, and just to manage expectations. Hopefully with all that, I don't know if it's too late. I think there's a couple moves they can do that can make it more interesting for new players and people who haven't got in yet. And they have to do something. And I'm curious what they say about it, because Blizzard doing free-to-play isn't unheard of.
Yeah, it's not. And I think, like you say, that's what could keep it viable, because, like, even though, I mean, say it was to release next year and it, you know, by then would have been around 6 years since the original Overwatch, I think they can still generate interest if they experiment with, like, like you say, like, maybe making the original game free to play, or kind of experimenting with that. So, and I think it'll be interesting to see how kind of the development unfolds with it.
But
for sure.
You can expect an update on Overwatch 2 and all the stuff we said. So moving on to our last section. And before we jump into that, I just want to mention that we're not talking about Hearthstone, because it'll be an expansion with cards and some other game mode that we can't predict. StarCraft 2 is dead to them. You might see an update. You might see something on Warcraft 3 Reforged, like I said. Basically, like, we're sorry we got caught. And Heroes of the Storm might get a character. They might just do that over, look, we still care. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. That's a game we care about. They don't care. They missed that chance. And I don't want Overwatch to end up like Heroes of the Storm. I don't like Heroes of the Storm. I'm just going to say that. It was pretty casual League of Legends and with Warcraft characters. And
I always thought it was a shame that it didn't actually get more of an audience because I think it had a lot of
did you ever play it?
I think I played a little bit of it, just a little bit. But I was more of a League of Legends player, so it was probably not going to pull me away longer term.
That's true. Because like once you're in League, it's like every other
You're
thing
in it
feels
permanently.
Or even Dota 2, like they needed to carve that spot earlier than they did.
Yeah.
So yeah, moving on to World of Warcraft. Their big game that just said Shadowlands release. It launched on the October 27th. So you can expect details for its first major patch being 9.1.0. This only really matters if you care about World of Warcraft. If you don't, well, this is not for you. I, as a World of Warcraft player who is not actively playing right now, I'm curious what to do. So World of Warcraft is a bunch of panels, a half-hour What's Next panel, which will be, like I said, and a deep dive panel. So obviously they announce the What's Next and they deep dive even harder on certain things. So it also has an hour long for a Q&A. So like there's a lot of World of Warcraft stuff. Obviously first major patch. The first major patches have been relatively minor, often adding a new like continuing story campaigns and maybe adding a raid. The one for Legion added Karazhan as a mythic dungeon.
Right.
I don't remember what BFA added, but I don't think it added anything substantial.
Yeah.
However, they've got 9.0.5 coming out, which is adding a few non-substantial things. Like Valor points are coming back. So like they went full on anti-currency and then they've gone like, you know what? It adds player choice, which is exactly why people like currencies. Like that's it. So I expect it to include a raid because Castle Nathri is done. It's released all its wings and looking for raid. So obviously there needs to be what's the next end game. And so a few months away. So with 9.0.5 coming out in March, so expect 9.1.0 in like May, like late May. I think by then they'll desperately need something out. And this should be substantial enough to keep interest because I think they know what they have to do to keep players interested. I think. I'm hoping they do. So to succeed Castle Nathri out, what do I think it'll be? Because there's a few options. It's probably going to take place in a zone that's already featured. There's a few storylines they can do. There could be Bastion to deal with Uther's faction because Uther ends up in Bastion and sort of rebels because he wants his memory because he fucking hates Arthas. And so there's that, which the story for that hasn't finished. I know if you pick the Covenant for them, it obviously will go into it. And there'll be a large part of the story. I pick Revendreth because vampires. Yeah, there's also Ardenweald, which is the magical forest of, which is like, when you talk about Blizzard designing an area, it is like 10 out of 10. I think it's one of the most beautiful zones in World of Warcraft. And they've nailed it with Shadowlands. And there's Ardenweald, they haven't finished the storyline dealing with the faction called the Drust, which appeared in Battle for Azeroth. It's kind of like these haunted tree folk of like Celtic mythology, kind of. They're really cool, and it's like the Koltirian druid gets forms based on the Drust.
Oh, nice.
So they look really creepy, and it's really cool.
And Blizzard is still such a strength of theirs is designing zones. Hey?
Designing zones
like
is
even
still
now
their strength.
Yeah.
Whether what else you believe about the rest of it is very different. It could also deal with the Primus, the missing leader of Maldraxxus, who is, like, there's a lot of theories and stuff going for him. So, there's a lot happening with World of Warcraft right now. But I think what's more interesting is what has been rumored about a certain sequel to World of Warcraft Classic, which, if you're familiar with World of Warcraft, it can only mean one thing, that you are not prepared for the Burning Crusade Classic. So there's leaks, there's rumors. It's pretty substantial that this is going to happen because like Classic was launched in August 2019, right at the end, and has completed its patch cycle to the Naxxramas raid. So Classic is done. It's had its full release schedule done. It's completed. It's like at the end. So the cycle is complete. So I expect a trailer and some major details because I think they've already done the hard work, which was literally putting it all together in the first place, working out how it all would function. So I think they've done all that already. WoW Classic was a success. They talk about in their reports, the president of Blizzard Entertainment said if it's a success, they'd make the Burning Crusade of Wrath. He also has since mentioned it is a success, as detailed in multiple earning calls for Activision Blizzard. TBC Classic is 100% happening. Like Classic, I'm very excited to jump back in. Hopefully I'm not going away on a big holiday this time, because that really interrupted Classic for me.
Yeah, that timing.
Because it's like the first month of Classic, I wasn't here. I wasn't home. I was in the US and couldn't play it. So I felt like I missed out, and then I didn't get back into it when I got back. But I sort of focused when I started. I was like so focused. I was loving it. And then just you stop playing, and then it's
probably almost unfortunate, hey, like probably like if you had been there for that whole month, like maybe you would even still be, you know, sort of playing it regularly now. Like maybe not, but like I think it was such a big deal like when it launched, like to actually have been there on day one. And I kind of regret like not actually going back, because I played a little bit of WoW Classic, but only a bit later, like sometime end of last year. But I do regret not kind of like jumping in when it launched in 2019.
Launch was very fun. There were queues.
Yeah, it was like, crazy, the volume of people.
So the question is for this is like, how do they do it? Because there's a lot of things they could do with making a new, like a follow-up. And just like Blizzard gave out a survey asking people what they wanted it to kind of look like, and like they literally wrote, thinking about the potential ways a player could start a character in Classic Burning Crusade, which of the following would you most prefer? Select one. Continue playing my current Classic character on my existing server as it progresses to the Burning Crusade expansion, with the option to transfer to a Classic server that will never progress past level 60. The other one was start a brand new character from level 58 on a new Burning Crusade server, or start a brand new character from level 1 on a Burning Crusade server, or continue playing my current Classic character on my existing server that will never progress past 60, with the option to transfer to a Burning Crusade server. So there are a lot of interesting options, and like obviously there's a lot of pros and cons to them all, and I think this is the hardest part to figure out. Like more than any other thing. Well, that's an interesting discussion to have, because like you could ask like how many Blood Elf Paladins will there be? And it's just too many, like way too many Blood Elf Paladins. And I think option 4 sounds the best, because you're not breaking up the Classic communities. Obviously Burning Crusade needs to find its new ones, and not everyone will want to continue on. Some people will want a Classic server, and they will want to play it in the community they already have. It just does make it more awkward how they would go about it, because obviously option 1 is the one they want. They want you to just want to make it upgrade. And then if you want to go to Classic, you can. But I think like the Classic servers are already created. They already have their communities. And as people progress onwards, they leave them behind, but it still leaves them. Like some will continue on.
Yeah.
Whether if they do the other option, people will be split on different realms again.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting like discussion. I think probably that option 4 is a good one, in the sense that I think you're right that even if they come out with Burning Crusade, I think there would actually probably be a pretty strong core that would just stay with Classic, because I think there were so many people that for so long just wanted to get that original vanilla experience. So I think there would be a decent amount of people that would actually just stay on. And like you say, like they've had time to kind of form, you know, guilds and like communities on the servers now again. So I think probably a decent amount of people would just want to stay at level 60 and just do vanilla stuff. But then obviously, having the option to go on to a Burning Crusade server.
I did find the option interesting of starting a character from level 58. So like you start it from Burning Crusade, which like for new players who haven't played it, makes a lot of sense.
It saves them the grind of doing, you know, the Classic leveling.
Yeah, but it also kind of takes it out of it, because then you're going to make a Blood Elf, it's going to be 58 in Hellfire.
Yeah.
So it's like, do they mix it up and go servers where that, you know, like how old private servers, if you ever played them, they used to be level 70 servers, level 80 servers.
And that's an interesting thing too, because almost if they decide to make it that you can start at 58, like it's almost making it more like retail, where like you can skip levels and stuff like that. And like obviously a lot of people wanted this experience because it is more like the original thing where you had to like go through that grind and like always level up. So it's an interesting dilemma, I think. Yeah,
so there are so many interesting questions you can have about what they're gonna do, and hopefully they make the right one. I got a feeling the problem with you transferring characters is that you're already at an advantage.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
I guess that's the same with the Burning Crusade as a whole anyway, because when the Burning Crusade came out, guess what? Like, it doesn't matter what level you are. Some people are in Outland, you're not. So I don't think it'll matter. I probably think it'll be the transfer thing. I think they'll do option 1.
Yeah.
And option 3, which is starting character from level 1, will be for new players.
And I think the thing of having a choice is always better when it comes to like just consumers in general. Like, it's better to have the choice of like either continuing on just with Classic and then going to Burning Crusade if you want to. I think that's always going to be the better option. But like you said, it's almost a thing where they're kind of, I think to a degree, it's kind of like damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, if they pick any of those options, like they're going to have supporters and like detractors either way, because they all have pros and cons.
You can expect them to make a decision on that. And I think that's about it for this video about everything you can expect from Blizzconline in 2021. There's a lot. There is actually a lot. And
there is quite a lot,
possibly some unannounced stuff. I doubt it with Blizzard.
It's probably their biggest year for a while in terms of like, just full sequels and just kind of like interesting
in terms of announcing stuff. Like, a lot of these was don't expect it this year.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I expect the Burning Crusade this year. Like, I do, because they've done the hard work.
Because by August it'll be 2 years as well. So yeah,
I can just see it happening. Like, it just seems easier. I'm curious what happens to Classic as a whole. Will they do rollback servers that restart from the get-go again? Now that would be fascinating as like a mechanic. But I think that's about it for this discussion. Thanks for joining me, Callum.
No worries.
I've been Mitch. If you enjoyed this discussion, please smash the like button into oblivion and get it back, please. We
Smash it, don't just hit it.
Or some other YouTube garbage. If you like it even more than that, hit subscribe and get the next one every week, tentatively.
With a wink.
Wink, wink, nudge. That's it. It is the goal to have these out weekly, but we've been a bit lazy lately. And if you have any questions or anything you'd like to add, feedback, etc., let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. I do read them and respond to them, except Heroes 3 ones, because there's so many.
It's too many to keep track of.
Too many, and I don't play Heroes 3. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you on the next podcast. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.